All right. So good morning and welcome. My name is JC Williams. I am the Holspire representative for the South Carolina Schools Network. The Schools Network is designed to allow individuals working on student health issues to share and learn from each other. Our goal is to provide a forum where school representatives can share, learn, compare, and help improve our efforts.
And my name is Erica Ayers. I'm the school wellness consultant with DHEC's Division of Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity Prevention. And I also serve as the executive director for the South Carolina Governor's Council on Physical Fitness. The mission of the Governor's Council is to support the health of all South Carolinians through the advancement of physical activity. And currently the council is focused on supporting student health and fitness, which is why they now work in conjunction with the schools network. An example of this collaboration is this webinar series. So the purpose in the webinars, if this is your first time with us, welcome. The purpose in the webinars is to enhance the collaboration between schools and communities using the whole school, whole community, whole child model as a framework to support student health. Why we are doing this? Well, today we're specifically looking at the component of physical education and physical activity. And when we look at our state, South Carolina FitnessGram data, what we see is that 2 of 5 public school students in South Carolina are overweight or obese, and that over 50% of our South Carolina students aren't meeting the minimum standards for cardiorespiratory fitness or the functioning of their heart and lung health. We also know that annually in the U.S., we spend $117 billion on costs related to low physical activity. This is low physical activity resulting in chronic conditions such as obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and other chronic conditions. So what can we do about this data? How can we make sure that all students in South Carolina have equitable opportunities to be healthy and to be academically successful? We work together. And the whole school, whole community, whole child model provides, again, the framework to help us do this. It calls for greater collaboration between schools and communities across multiple sectors, and it puts the student in the center and takes a comprehensive approach to supporting their health and their academic well-being. So our panelists today are going to provide some awesome resources with us on what this looks like in South Carolina, as well as some national resources as well of how we can help our schools be more physically active. Before we introduce our panel, though, we want to get a better idea of who y'all are, our audience. So we're going to launch our first poll that JC's going to do.
All right, so y'all have about 30 seconds to answer our introduce yourself question. We got about 3 more seconds. Thank you to everyone who has answered. We have a wide variety of people joining us today. That's very exciting. All right, so today we have the honor of hearing from Brianna Mealing from South Carolina's FitnessGram, Dr. Julian Reed from Walkabouts, Deborah Ives from The Walking Classroom, and Sarah Cunningham from Easley High School. Before Bree begins, we are curious what you think the percentage of students in South Carolina schools have healthy heart and lung health. I'm going to share another poll with you, and please answer. We'll give it about 30 seconds. All right, thanks everyone for answering. Well, we've got the majority thinking 36% are in the healthy zones. So let's hear from Bree.
Thank you, JC. Good morning, everybody. I am Brianna Mealing. I'm the FitnessGram coordinator at the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. Glad to be here. And thanks for everybody who participated in the poll. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But I asked that question specifically to gauge the awareness of status of students' fitness in South Carolina. And I wanted to specifically touch on the heart and lung health or cardiorespiratory fitness, because it's very important. You know, it's our body's ability to efficiently pump blood and oxygen throughout our body, which is necessary to reduce the onset of chronic disease and sustain a healthy and happy life. And so the data that was mentioned in the poll, this is from our South Carolina FitnessGram initiative, and this is what I want to discuss a little bit today. Erica and I, we work on this initiative together, and I really wanted to just bring to focus why physical activity opportunities before, during, and after school are so important. Okay, so next slide. So what is FitnessGram? Next slide. So SC FitnessGram measures and improves student fitness by working with schools to enhance physical education and create more opportunities for physical activity. And it's not just the schools, but also working with school districts and communities to provide proven practices to increase the amount of time students are physically active. Next slide. So to better understand it, you can kind of think of it in three parts. The first is the software. So FitnessGram software really allows schools to measure students' health-related fitness for grades 2, 5, 8, and high school. And a few of those health-related fitness components, I mentioned the heart and lung health or cardiorespiratory fitness is one. There's BMI, muscular strength and endurance, and also flexibility. But then there's the second part of FitnessGram, which is the system, which allows this data to be compiled and shared annually at the state level. And then lastly, it's also a movement, which, you know, SC FitnessGram is really striving to use this data to inform improvements in student fitness through enhancing PE and opportunities for physical activity, again, before, during, and after school. Next slide. So what is the data telling us? In 2021-22 school year, which was still impacted a good bit by COVID-19 pandemic, there were 514 schools from across 47 districts who participated, which was nearly 67,000 students represented throughout the whole state. And of those students, a little over 60% of them were living in poverty. Now, how did they score? 59% of students had healthy weight, and only 43% of students had healthy heart and lungs. So that's, you know, concerning. And this is something that we want to discuss and really figure out how to improve. Next slide. And so these are some of those areas of concern. Erica mentioned it a little bit ago in her in the beginning. 2 out of 5 students are overweight or obese. Well over half of our students failed to have healthy heart and lung health. And if you're looking at the demographics, Black and Hispanic students living in poverty had the lowest fitness levels. And also, as students age, we see that from elementary to high school, the percentage of them who are in the healthy fitness zone also decreases. So in summary, we really can do better. It takes a healthy village to raise a healthy child. So folks at the state level, in the communities, schools, families, at home, all of us need to work together to support students' healthy habits. And the responsibility really and opportunities cannot just be in the PE classroom or just for recess. Students need other opportunities as well to be physically active, where they have access to safe places to play and so on. Next slide. And so what are the benefits of these opportunities? Well, our students, you know, they are able to maintain healthy weight or are less likely to be obese. Students being physically active can also have lower risks for diabetes and improved social emotional health, better test scores, college and career readiness. They're also able to live healthier, longer lives. And ultimately, what we're really striving for is a healthier South Carolina. So this is just a little snapshot of some of the data from our FitnessGram initiative. You know, the other panelists will share some awesome resources on looking at physical activity opportunities in action. Next slide. So very short and sweet. That's all that I have. Thank y'all for participating. If y'all have any questions, here's our contact information. Y'all can reach out, just let me know. And I'm just gonna go ahead and turn it back over to Jason. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Bree. That's very important information that it directly comes from our students in South Carolina. Next, we will hear from Dr. Reed. We have another poll for you. This poll is, can physical activity during the school day, not including physical education or recess, improve the behavior management and mental well-being of all students? So this is from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. Give it a few more seconds. Thanks to everyone who answered. It was very fun to watch everyone unanimously pick yes. All right. Now we'll hear from Dr. Reed.
All right, thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity. So Julian Reed, I'm the founder of Walkabouts. I'm also a professor at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. And you can go to the next slide, that's fine, Erica, if they wanna look a little bit about my background. So my area of research is physical activity in the built environment, as well as looking at how physical activity impacts the cognition of kids, as well as behavior management, social emotional learning, and academic achievement. So I've written a few books, as well as been part of quite a few research studies, including one on FitnessGram in South Carolina and academic achievement. So as we all know, physical activity is really important for kids. It's important for adults as well. And as a physical activity researcher, we recognize that there are limitations on how to get kids active, especially those who live in under-resourced communities. Walkabouts, the platform I talked to you a little bit about today, was created as a way to get more movement in schools, primarily in the classroom. I teach motor learning, and the first thing we do when we're born is we move. Actually, some of that that kicking that we do, that supine kicking, some motor development specialists say that already demonstrates an adult walking pattern. But as kids progress from infancy into early childhood, the level of physical activity opportunities decreases. And we really know from data that physical activity really increases for the most part in early elementary, but then it really plateaus at middle school and unfortunately goes down. And there are a whole host of reasons for that. But one thing we know is kids spend the majority of their waking hours at school, and that's why schools are ripe for intervention. At the same time, my wife's a classroom teacher, so I understand the limitations put on teachers. Teachers also are responsible for teaching content, and that content will always be the priority, and it should be, because that's why kids are there at school. And so to add something more to a teacher is really difficult in the sense that it reduces instruction time. What Walkabouts is it uses movement that specifically correlates with each state's standards in math and language arts. And so although we're talking about South Carolina today, our system is used, our program throughout the country. Our system knows what state you're in and pulls those specific standards in. And the other thing that is unique about our platform is if you're teaching, say, a first grade in terms of language arts, and you're doing long and short vowel sounds, the movements that the kids do tell the teacher if they're getting the concepts or not, and then it changes every time you play it. So although it comes in like a video, it changes if you played that same lesson. in South Carolina, we've been funded now by the Innovation Grant through the Department of Education now for, I think it's 5 years. So I would encourage those on the call right now, if your center or district or schools are not using walkabouts, to let them know that you have free access because it's already funded through the state innovation. And all you have to do is go to walkabouts.com and you can sign up, or you can reach out to me and I can get you in your school or your early childhood center, because we're pre-K primarily through 2nd grade, but starting in the fall, we have content going all the way up to 5th grade. We can go to the next slide, Erica. So executive functions, I'm sure you've all heard of at some point, are located in our prefrontal cortex. And not to get too into the weeds here on neuroscience, but those executive functions in that prefrontal cortex are essential for learning. And we are pretty confident now that when you increase your physical activity and that more blood goes to the brain, it does a lot of different things beyond just promoting alertness. We know it also helps with behavior management. It helps with academic focus, attention, and so forth. And this area of study actually started in the field of gerontology in the 60s. It's moved its way through adulthood and now obviously talking about it with children. So physical activity for movement, just for movement's sake, as they were talking about FitnessGram, very important for the overall physical health, but it's really important for our brain health as well. And you can see what these executive functions are responsible for, from planning, attention, reasoning, monitoring, to even inhibition, which we can get to when we talk about behavior management. Next slide. So just to kind of give you a visualization here, that's the only reason this slide is here, is just to kind of give you an idea when you see that prefrontal cortex, where that is located. It's in our frontal lobe of the brain. And sometimes we talk about physical activity and how it is important for learning, and a lot of times people don't know why. And that's the reason why I'm sharing some of this. There is real science behind this. It's not just for kids to get their wiggles out, as you often hear, which is true, right? It helps kids. We're not designed to be sedentary, especially young children, but adults can only focus for so long too. But there is real science behind the movement and what it does in the brain. So if we're going to get that movement, it's going to improve our overall physical health. It's also doing a lot for our brain health, which is really important, not only for adults, but obviously for kids. Kids are at school, so we want to use as many opportunities as we can to get them to be able to process more information and to be able to stay focused. Well, we know physical activity can be very helpful with that. I know it's counterintuitive, but kids who suffer from ADHD, actually the research shows movement is one of the best ways to help those kids focus, but it's also helpful for all people to help focus, increase cognition, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Next slide. So some of you've probably seen the images of these two brains. This comes from a colleague of mine, Chuck Hillman. He was at the University of Illinois, he's now at Northeastern in Boston, but he was able to demonstrate with just after sitting, quietly, and then getting to a little bit of light activity, you can see how the brain changes. You can see how it's much more lit up. And it's because we got more blood going to that brain. And think about, I know for me, I get my best ideas, honestly, when I'm moving. I have a standing desk, a treadmill desk, but his research, as well as others, was really able to demonstrate that not only are our kids healthier, but look what it can do from the standpoint of learning. I've already mentioned some of these: concentration, memory, focus, but also improved, time on task. Also that behavior and that engagement. We have found here, even with walkabouts, which we had some researchers from Iowa State, University of California, show that kids who use walkabouts were more engaged in their lessons after the walkabouts. So this image here is really just to show you, hey, what's happening, with the brain from light activity, from sitting sedentary to just light activity. Next slide. This is just to try to also just demonstrate again some more science on, okay, so when more blood goes to the brain, what really happens over time is it stimulates more neurons. By doing that is because we have growth factors. These growth factors help to stimulate neurogenesis. Well, how do we communicate on a day-to-day basis is neurons talking to one another in our brain, and eventually those neurons talking to different parts of our body. If physical activity can increase those structural changes in the brain, what's going to increase? Cognition. So when you see here physical exercise at the structural level, you get the neurogenesis. At the functional, cognition helps to decrease anxiety and depression. And then at the molecular level, those are those growth factors that I was talking about that help to stimulate this change, which ultimately improves behavior and improves learning. Next slide. This is kind of showing it in a different way, so you can kind of put a context to it beyond the words, is, hey, these neurons, we're increasing the density of these neurons, we're increasing the connections, and that ultimately improves learning. And as a physical activity researcher, I'm not a neuroscientist, I'm a health scientist, but to get more movement in schools, we often have to talk about those cognitive benefits because kids go to school to learn. Of course, almost every school and principal out there would like to have more physical education time. It's just very difficult. There's a lot of restraints and there's also cost to that. But if we're able to demonstrate, hey, this can actually help you in the classroom, it's much more likely to be adopted. And so you can see here with this visual, there are truly structural changes that are happening in the brain with movement. Next slide. So we talked about academic benefits already, but in terms of also that social emotional learning or that mental health, we know that the physical activity can help with motivation. It can help with collaboration and creativity. One thing that we have found from COVID, and it's obviously we're coming out of that, but there was a lot of isolation for young children, and their only time to get physical activity was in a school setting. And as we're seeing kids come back into schools, that movement beyond the cognitive components, those social components are really important as well. Next slide. So what I'm going to do here is show you a brief video case study of kids using walkabouts, and I'm happy to do a demo for you at another time if you want to email me, but I want to just kind of show you how it works a little bit, and then you can check it out on your own. So let me do that. All right.
In the stage that we're in, our students are moving less, overweight, obese, and from my position, it's one that supports teachers.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened there.
In the stage that we're in, our students are moving less, overweight, obese, And for my position, it's one that supports teachers.
I think we're having some bandwidth issues on my end. Give me 1 second. I have this loaded up as a file that is not on the internet as well. We must be having some issues here. Let's try it. Let me hit share again and try it this way. I'll fast forward a little bit here.
Dr. Reed, will you share?
Yes.
Thanks.
Sorry, give me a second. Sorry, is it not sharing?
No.
Okay. All right, let me I apologize. Our internet has been, so let me try again.
This
All right.
happens anytime anyone has an awesome video to share. So
All right, so let me see. Let's see if share now works. Can you see
Yep.
the screen?
looks good.
All right.
Comprehensive health, so we can get students moving, and so we can tackle this problem of obesity in our state and nation. I'm the academic specialist for comprehensive health physical education for Greenville County Schools K through 12, so I support PE teachers and classroom teachers that teach comprehensive health instruction. I had heard about walkabouts and had the opportunity to view some of the videos, and I thought it was just excellent. Our district currently, a lot of our teachers for breaks in the school day would use GoNoodle as an example, but what I loved about walkabouts is it was correlated to the South Carolina standards, and that there was no instructional time that was lost during the actual classroom, because the teacher can correlate the video to what they're teaching to the standard for that day. So that's what I really loved about it. There was no time wasted, because as we know, as educators, we never have enough time for anything. So this was just a great way to be able to incorporate the math and ELA standards pre-K through 2, to be able to work with the videos and provide student support and teacher support.
You can do a lot of things on walkabouts. You learn a lot, and you also have fun. Pretty much you just learn more. Walkabouts teaches you, if you don't really know how to do the thing, it like explains everything, and it like gets all the littles out of you.
We are serving 51 elementary schools and 6 CDCs, which is our child development centers. So we have 57 schools that currently are using Active Ed walkabouts, sound instruction, not only with physical education, but comprehensive health. So we can get students moving, and so we can tackle this problem of obesity in our state and nation. I'm the academic specialist for comprehensive health. Each grade level has a curriculum map for math or ELA, so this is basically just a supplemental resource that goes along with the curriculum maps that teachers can use. We all teach the standards, so these are correlated to the standards. So if I'm teaching fractions for that day, I've got a video on fractions that gets our students up and moving. So it's just a seamless fit. It seems to work very well, and our students absolutely love them. The one thing that I can tell you, you can quote me on this, is that the students let us know if we miss this opportunity to miss the video. So that says a lot, that students really enjoy Active Ed and the walkabouts, and they're learning a lot while doing that.
You use your body to do things. Your body knows something new and
Walkabouts are fun because you can you get to move, and I like to move around a lot.
All right. Sorry about the technical issues there. And I will turn it back over to you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. That's a super impressive program, especially to be aligned with our state standards. It makes integration in the classroom so much easier. So we are grateful that you've shared that with us.
Thanks, and sorry again for the bandwidth problems.
No worries. Most people who have worked in schools know that bandwidth is always questionable. So next we will hear from Deborah Ives. We have another poll. If everyone will take about 30 seconds to answer about the walking classroom. What does the walking classroom provide? We'll give it about 5 more seconds. All right, thanks everyone. And we will turn it over to Deborah from the walking classroom.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I am so grateful for all the background information that Dr. Reed provided. He's definitely set the stage to talk about the walking classroom. We are an educational nonprofit. I've been with the walking classroom for about 11 years now. Started working with our founder, Laura Fenn. She's based in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is where I was living at the time too. So you can go on to the next slide and we'll see what we have to say there. So in any event, I'm sure any educators in the group would recognize the image on the left, kids sitting at their desks. And of course, this was accentuated during COVID, that's for sure, kids sitting at desks in front of screens at that point. And so the idea is to get kids up and moving around with all of the associated benefits that Dr. Reed has highlighted about that kind of thing. So you could go on to the next slide. So I'm hoping that by the end of the session, you'll understand our program, the research behind it, the research that's been done in connection with our program, and the resources available that supplement our program. Important to know that our program was created by an elementary school teacher. She's experienced firsthand the impact of kids getting less and less PE and exercise during the course of the day. She was a 5th grade elementary school teacher, and Laura had the typical 5th grade classroom that spanned, from high achievers to ADHD kids to, kids living in poverty as well. And she was looking for a way to get her kids up and moving around and a little more engaged in what was going on in school. And she was a big podcast listener herself. So she decided that her kids could actually enjoy walking and listening to podcasts. And she decided to create and build out this program, the Walking Classroom. So you can go on to the next slide. So we love this image. This is sort of our go-to image. This was sent to us by a teacher that got our program. And, the thing I love about it is the kids are smiling. They're obviously moving. They're actually lined up in the way that we teach teachers to line kids up in connection with a walk. So, it's sort of our program in a nutshell. You can go on to the next slide. So what is it that we provide? We actually provide an audio device that's manufactured here in the US in Ohio, and it's called a Playaway device. And some of you may know of this device because you can find it in libraries, school libraries, public libraries, and very often they are loaded with books, but ours are preloaded with 167 podcasts that align to curriculum standards. They're geared for kids in 3rd grade through 8th grade. I guess the other thing I want to mention about our devices is that there is no Wi-Fi or a data plan or anything required to use it. They're locked and loaded, and the most off-task thing that a student can do is listen to the wrong educational podcast. There's no texting or TikTok or anything like that. So the price of the device is $125 fully loaded with the podcast. But later in the presentation, I'm going to give you information about how you can apply for a donated class set of program materials. So you can go on. We have on our website, a really great sort of wealth of information about the program. And one of the things you can do is you can download the listing of all the podcasts that are on the audio device. And in addition to the actual podcast topics, which include language arts, social studies, history, a ton of great American history, especially biographies and science topics. So we kind of cover everything but math, really. And in addition to the main topic of the podcast, there is a little health literacy message at the beginning of every podcast. And there's also a character value that can be discussed as well. We provide a full-on teacher's guide that has questions about the content and suggested correct answers. And it always has a question about the health literacy message and the character value as well. So the format of the podcasts are pretty similar, probably for about 75–80% of them. The voices on the podcasts are 2 students, and they're on a walk with their teacher, Mrs. Fenn. And the students greet each other, and that's usually when the health message is discussed. The importance of getting sleep, and what's an empty calorie, and why is exercise important. And then their teacher, Mrs. Fenn, joins them, and they transition. They start talking about the main topic as they go for a walk. So your students who are listening to the podcast, it's sort of an experience like they're overhearing a conversation rather than being lectured to. So, the podcasts are absolutely kid-friendly. They're in the voices of kids along with their teacher, Mrs. Fenn. And there's plenty of very gentle humor in them too, which is actually really nice for kids. And it's a very positive experience for everybody. So in the podcasts range sort of from 14 to maybe 18 minutes long, depending upon the topic. The timeline was very intentional. The idea was to create an experience that a classroom teacher could do within a classroom time period. So, alrighty, you can go on to the next slide. Okay, so yes, we have extensive lesson plans, and you can actually go on to the next slide for this. So we have a sample of an annotated lesson plan that you can take a look at, and our lesson plans very much follow the same sort of sequence for every single podcast. We're a staff of mostly former teachers, and so we're constantly trying to figure out how to make the program easy for teachers to use, because we are well aware of, the constraints that Dr. Reed referred to in terms of, the issue with time in the classroom. How much can a teacher actually take on or do? And so one of our main objectives has been to support teachers and make it easy for them to use this program. And so the lesson plan, I'll tell you how long it is, and the character value that we discussed, and the health value, the health message that's in there, a short synopsis of what the kids are going to hear. Although I will say, we always encourage teachers to go on the walk with the kids because of the many benefits that they get as well. There's usually a listing of vocabulary words that, you know, an instructor might want to highlight for their students before they begin the experience of walking while listening to the podcast, just to give them the heads up for what they might be, you know, hearing for the first time. And then there's a list of discussion questions with suggested correct answers. So, and that's my son, who was a park ranger at Yellowstone. I just had to include that while I could. And so you can go on to the next. This is the comprehension quiz that we provide. I mean, this is always meant to be a supplemental resource. There's not a sequence of listening to the podcasts. An instructor can, you know, take a look at her lesson planning for the week and take a look at the listing of podcasts and include the topics that she wants to include. There's no requirement to use the comprehension quiz, but it is, you know, it's a helpful sort of a resource to help teachers confirm for themselves that this method of learning really, really works. In fact, in the training that we provide, we suggest that teachers show the kids the quiz before they go for their walk, so they have, you know, some clues as to what to listen for. So, you know, our goal with all this is to ensure the kids have a good experience and feel good about the whole experience. So, all right, you can go on to the next slide. So, you know, once an educator or an after-school professional becomes an adopter of the walking classroom, one of the first things that we do is we provide them with free online training, which takes a little bit under an hour or so. And what it does is it gives some background about the program and some of the good information that Dr. Reed mentioned, the importance of physical activity and the many benefits of it. It also gives information about how to organize the kids for a walk, and provides information about the supplemental resources that we've curated for all the podcasts. So as I said, we're former teachers and trying to figure out how to make it easy for teachers to expand the lessons. So for every podcast, an educator can go to our website, to the teacher resources page on our website, and we provide a short slide deck, which is good for visual learners. We always provide some related video clips about the specific topic. And for hot springs and geysers, there's a short video on the geysers of Yellowstone. And then there's a clip on the dancing mud, the bubbling mud pots in New Zealand. Then we also always provide some kind of a downloadable, printable worksheet that relates specifically to that podcast. There will be suggested hands-on activities. There's also almost always a link to a virtual field trip. The other thing that we provide is, it is 167 podcasts, so it's a lot to sort of cull through, but we've made it possible for educators to search by subject area or themed grouping. You can also search by character value too. So if you're having trouble with honesty in your classroom or friendship, you can pull in a lot of podcasts that in some way or another mention this character value in connection with the podcast. So, all right, you can go on to the next. So we are fortunate. We are an evidence-based program. As I mentioned, we're a nonprofit, and one of our foundation funders was providing a really generous grant for us. But in order to accept the grant, we also had to accept the requirement that we have a formal assessment of our program, which the foundation also funded, which was fabulous. And so we identified a team of researchers at UNC Chapel Hill that did two different studies for us, one of which was a classroom study. They used teachers who were already using our program in sort of a poor rural county in North Carolina. And what they did was, with the new cohort of students that those teachers got, They asked certain teachers to have the kids use the program as designed, walk while listening to a podcast. And the other half of the teachers were asked to have the kids sit and listen to a podcast. The researchers really wanted to zero in on the impact of physical activity and connection with this experience. And what the researchers determined was that, what they used was the comprehension quiz that we provide for each podcast. They administered the quiz before all the students went for a walk. Then they administered the quiz, the comprehension quiz, after the students listened to the podcast, some of the students walked, some did not, obviously. And then they administered the same quiz a week later to all of their students to measure their retention. And what the researchers found was the kids that walked while listening to the podcast learned the information better, and they retained the information longer during that 1 week time period. They also saw they administered, the researchers administered a times table test actually before the kids had the listening experience and afterwards. And even though there is no math in connection with our program, the kids who walked performed better than the kids who sat on a times table test that was administered, which was, we thought, really interesting and certainly demonstrated the positive impact of the moving part of the experience. Kids were in better moods after they had the opportunity to walk, which is probably not too surprising. They reported feeling happy, alert, energized, strong, educated, all of which was no surprise to us, but was great to hear in this research assessment that they did. The other thing the researchers did for us was we donate as many class sets as we can at back to school time. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you can get on that waiting list. And what we did in 1 year was we asked teachers who got donated class sets of audio devices to administer a short health literacy test to their students before they started using the Walking Classroom program. They used the program for a full school year, and then the teachers administered the same health literacy quiz at the end of the school year. And over this study of 1,000 students, students' health literacy absolutely improved. I mean, there are certain messages that we keep coming back around to that are reinforced in these podcasts. So we were, that we were really happy to see. Students also reported higher levels. They self-reported higher levels of physical activity, which is interesting. Did they actually? Not sure if they were getting more exercise. If they were using the Walking Classroom, they were getting 20 minutes of additional exercise a day using the program, but they were also self-reporting additional physical activity, which for us indicates the kids get certainly we're getting the message that physical activity was important in their life. So you can move on to the next slide. This is just a visual of the same, the research, the classroom study assessment that was done. On the left, the black line is the students who sat and listened. Everyone took the same pre-test. Then there was the post-test after their listening experience, and then the test a week later, the test of long-term memory. And the green line is the kids who walked, and clearly they hung on to the information. They learned it better and they hung on to it. So, all right, you can move on to the next slide. One of the favorite things that the researchers did was they interviewed the kids who had the walking experience in the lunchroom after their experience. And these are the word clouds that resulted from questions like, how do you feel while you walk, listen, and learn? And how do you feel after you walk, listen, and learn? So, all really good. I'll say this, because we donate a lot of class sets, we do get a lot of thank you notes from teachers and students. And the first thing the kids say about the program is that it's fun, which is super great. But I feel like the second most common word they use to describe this experience is they feel calm, which is really great. I mean, I think what is it? Is it because they've got earbuds in, they're listening to the podcast, they're in their own little world. It's a little break from the sort of what could be a chaotic classroom experience for some kids. So the other thing we did not include in the research, but teachers will tell us very frequently, is that if teachers or schools schedule to have the walk-in classroom sort of first thing in the morning, maybe a couple of times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that kids are more inclined to get to school on time, and they're more inclined to get to school, period. It's just an enjoyable experience, and anything that helps along those lines is great, I think. So, okay, next slide. So because of this research that was done, we are an evidence-based program, a tier 2 definition of evidence-based, which is the second highest bar for any intervention product or program. These are students, I think, walking in Hawaii. We've been around now for probably 11, 12 years, and we've distributed probably about or maybe over at this point 80,000 audio devices, and these devices can be used year after year. So we're impacting at least 100,000 kids each year. We try to support all of the teachers who are using the program, and if they are unable to use the program, if they've moved on to another school or retired, we try to redeploy it and make sure that someone else at their site can use the program. So, all right, next slide. I wanted to mention I've got included a couple of slides about ESSER funding. I mean, that's definitely been on our radar screen. It's such a huge influx of funds. And, I go to a lot of conferences and exhibit our program and present about it. And my feeling was that the more information that's out there about this ESSER funding and what it's meant to be used for, the better for everybody. There were three separate tranches of funding were approved. And I was listening in on a consultation with an education consultant from McKinsey, and their feeling is that probably upwards of half of the money that has come to school districts has not been spent at this point. That a lot of the, sort of health and safety spending in connection with ESSER has already happened. Maybe some hiring has gone on, and now districts may be looking more towards educational resources that might require an expenditure up front, but that can be used year after year. And that's exactly what the walking classroom is as well. We're evidence-based. It addresses academic learning loss, results in more engaged students. Plus, because there's a character value associated with each one of the podcasts, it provides a social emotional support as well. So, and you can go on to the next slide. So here is just the sort of listing of the three different, emergency relief acts that were approved by Congress and geared towards, K-12 schools. And there were three different acts. You can go on to the next slide because I feel like this helps keep it in context in a way. As you all probably know, the majority of funding for schools really does come from states and local governments. And in 2021, out of the 764 or 765 or so billion that went in total funding to K-12 schools, 60 billion of that came from the federal government. And that's for, Title I, Title II, Title III, all of the federal programs that you all are familiar with. The three different, supplemental additional pots of funds that are geared towards K-12 schools are laid out here. The spending deadlines for these funds are September 30th of each of these years. And although I think that really the bulk of all of this money has been allocated to districts, it's just a matter of whether or not it's been committed or, is being used for anything in particular. And you can see this last set of funds, the ARP funds, the standard amount of federal funding is 60 billion in each year, and this source of funds is twice that. So I just feel like it's important for everybody to kind of get a sense for what may be in your district at this point. So let's move on to the next slide. Oh, so, and for how we align, we have lots of information about how we align with ESSER funding. It addresses lost instructional time. It's an evidence-based program, provides social emotional support, and addresses academic needs. We are constantly amazed at the way that educators are seeing our program and determining that they want to use it in all kinds of ways. It was originally created to be a supplemental classroom resource for 4th grade and 5th grade students. At this point, it is widely used from 3rd grade at the low end up through 8th grade. And we do have high school teachers that use our program too. It's mostly for kids who have been pulled out of the regular classroom for, academic reasons, behavioral reasons. So we just recently had a school district come in and acquired a number of Walk-Its because they wanted to make it available to their migrant students so that their migrant students could check out the audio devices and take them home wherever that might be. So we have a lot of English language learner type instructors who are using the program, special ed teachers. It's been really inspiring to see the different kinds of things that educators have been using the walking classroom for. Also, super important, we probably distribute, maybe a third of what we distribute is going to out of school time settings, whether it's a before school program, an after school program. So yeah, lots of great implementations and after school programs as well. So I might have one more slide in connection with this. ESSER funding. No, I guess that's it. So yeah, so we are in all kinds of out of school time programs, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, summertime programs. Some of our biggest implementations have been school districts that are acquiring the walking classroom to use in summertime programs. Importantly, these devices can be used year after year. They're very robust. They're powered by a AAA battery. The batteries do need to be replaced after 20-25 hours. These devices are also easily shared among classes because the experience is probably no more than 45 minutes in total. So there's a whole nother set of kids that can use the program during the course of the day. And we just recommend the kids use their own set of earbuds. So you can listen to sample podcasts by going to our website, full sample podcast. You can also download, we have an app that you can download, and there are about 28 podcasts that you can listen to for free on the app. But yeah, I mean, the website is a great place to go for lots of information about the walking classroom. And of course, you can apply for a donated class set. Our application is on the website. It's a short application. It's maybe 5-6 questions. When you fill out the application and you hit submit, you become part of our waiting list. I will say this, one of the things that my colleague Natalie does is she reads all the applications and she will rank them on a on a range from 1 to 10, with 10 being the scenario that's the most compelling and the one that we really want to try to get the program to. And then when we have funds and we have funders, we go to that wait list. I am constantly telling funders that this is the place to go to identify educators that have expressed interest in the program. And these are the people we should fund to get the walking classroom program. So I really encourage you to do that. The last thing I wanted to mention is we were a standalone nonprofit for many years, but at the end of 2021, we became part of the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, which is a much bigger nonprofit. And they have a team of development professionals, and all they do is look for funding for programs like ours. So I really encourage you to go to the website and apply for a donated class set, because we need good applicants on our waiting list. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And this is there, my contact information is right there.
Thank you, Deborah. That's great information and a great program, especially to be able to reach up into the middle school years. Those are fun. I admire anyone who is teaching in a middle school setting. So to have access to this program would be great.
Thank you
next
so much.
up, we have Sarah Cunningham, who is an active South Carolina educator and will be speaking on disc golf. So our poll is about our knowledge of disc golf at this point. If everyone will take about 10 to 15 seconds to answer, and then we'll get to hear from Sarah. About 3 more seconds. All right. Thanks everyone for answering the poll, and we will turn it over to Sarah Cunningham.
Oh man, I am a little bummed about the never heard of it. All right, well, if I've learned anything in the last hour here, is that we need to be active to retain some information. So don't worry, my presentation will be short and sweet, but no one's watching you. So why don't you all just like stand up, spin around one time, touch your toes, get back in your seats. Get a little active learning going on for my presentation here. But yes, I'm Sarah Cunningham. I'm a high school science teacher at Easley High School, and I love disc golf. So for those of you who have never heard of disc golf, it is played very much like regular golf. We call that ball golf. We have 18 holes, sometimes 9. But instead of hitting a ball with a club, we're just throwing discs. We try not to use the F word. We don't say frisbees. They are different. But we're throwing discs, and just like in golf where you have a driver and a 5-iron and your putter, we have drivers and mid-ranges and putters too. But to just get started, I would suggest 3 discs, a driver, a mid-range, and putter. But even 1 disc is fine to just get started. And we have pars. We're trying to get birdies, not bogeys. But anyway, so like I said, I work at Easley High School here, and this picture right here is of the day that we put in the full 18-hole course at Easley High School, and that boy Chase was the first student to come through and play our course that day. So you can go on to the next. I got a couple just pictures here up front. And there's a little T sign at the top right, Easley High School, our 18th hole. And we mentioned, connecting with the community. I've got some community members that have advertised on our hole signs. And recently I've gotten a course in over at Pickens High School as well. And there's a little picture there at the bottom right of their course. And that bottom right picture sort of shows the PE loop kind of in blue. I know it's a pretty small graphic. But we have sort of, an easy loop for our PE students that's out in the open, nothing, daunting about that course. And then there's a more challenging wooded course back behind the perimeter there of Pickens High School, for the PE students if they so desire, but also just the community members. And here at Easley High School, I can't tell you how many times I've driven by our school on a Saturday and seen people out playing. So it really brings the community into your school. It really helps that relationship. Those are some kids in my little summer league over there on the left. Okay, you can go on the next slide. These are just like a clinic I was running and a tournament I was running. You can go on to the next slide. So just specifically what I'm doing is trying to get courses in schools. And of course, this works for secondary, but really this is any level. We can have courses at elementary schools, middle schools, etc. Got that motto, if you build it, they will come. So we've gotten some courses in schools locally here in the upstate. And I am also a sponsored player through Innova Disc Golf. And Innova Disc Golf, one of the main disc golf companies in the US, is based out of Rock Hill, South Carolina. So we have a great resource right here in the state. I run a weekly club at my school, and there's pros and cons, of course, of big schools. The bigger the school, though, you still only have 5 kids that are starting basketball players. So there's more activities needed for some of those kids that aren't going to get into your traditional team sports. I mean, I love team sports and I grew up with that as well. But disc golf is, an excellent outlet for some of those students as well. I run, an annual tournament here. But what I enjoy doing the most lately is running a summer league just between schools. And I advertise at local courses around our area. And I try to use any contacts I know in different high schools in my area to try to advertise that. But the kids really enjoy that. We do this every Tuesday night. And, it's consistent date. But we travel around to different courses in the area. So they really do enjoy competing for their school. And that they enjoyed the summer league so much last year that we kind of rolled that into like a fall league, which I did monthly. And then I do have my own 3 children, so my time is tight sometimes. But then the students themselves picked it up for a spring league and ran a bi-weekly spring league just this past spring because they just enjoy it so much. All right, go on to the next. This is just my little advertisement that I kind of put out at the schools and the courses. To try to attract players that might, enjoy playing disc golf, but not know that there's some organized high school opportunities for them. And we give the little trophies, out at the end of the season. So you can go on to the next slide. So if getting disc golf in your school is something you are interested in, which I highly recommend, you can, of course, ask me. My contact information is right there. But also probably the biggest resource for you is the EDGE program, Educational Disc Golf Experience, and their website's the second one down there, edgediscgolf.com. They are a nonprofit organization that, that's their focus, is getting disc golf in schools. And they have packages down to the elementary school level where you can just get maybe 50 discs for your PE class and a couple portable baskets. They come with a little curriculum where they teach the sport of disc golf and even some STEM curriculum stuff too. I referenced that I teach science here. I always talk about Bernoulli's principle, conservation of angular momentum, and always take my physics kids out to play disc golf once a year too. And I always look forward to that. Professional Disc Golf Association is there. There are some little junior tournaments that you could find. I mentioned Innova Disc Golf. They are right out of Rock Hill, South Carolina. Great resource. David Shope is a sales manager that I always go through. Innova is obviously very pro getting courses in schools, so they are very easy to work with. And of course, I'm in the upstate, so I put the Upstate Disc Golf Club there. But I guarantee wherever you are, outside of South Carolina as well, that there is a Facebook group that is a great resource, and you can just reach out to them. There's someone there that I'm sure would be happy to even come to your school, put on a little clinic, just teach you PE teachers or anybody just, about the finer points of how to actually throw, what the types of shots are, what the discs are, things like that. But anyway, yeah, my last tie-in though is it really was a great community tie for Easley. I love seeing community members out at our school on the weekends and, you know, school holidays. All right, that's it for me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for all that you've done with disc golf in the communities. All right. I am not seeing any questions. Erica, have you come across any at this point?
I haven't seen any, but folks can still ask. We are short on time just because we had so many amazing presenters to share with y'all today. But you can still put your questions in the chat or the Q&A, and our presenters will take a look at them and respond to them, and they'll go out with a follow-up email that JC sends along with the recording. If you have colleagues who you think would be interested in this information, please share this recording with them when you get it. I think it'd also be really cool if you think they would have the time and want to look at it. Share this with your administrators, because there's a lot. These are all really great resources, and Bree and Dr. Reed did a great job at the beginning making the case about this is our students' health data. This is why we need to improve it. This is the benefits, whether it's their physical health, their academic, their cognitive health, or their emotional, mental health. So we really encourage you to take these resources and share them with your colleagues and your administrators if you are in a school setting. Just a couple of quick things. This is our last webinar for the school year. So I do want to take a second to thank all of the presenters that we had this past year. We had so many of them. They provided so many awesome resources for us. Just a reminder that all of the recordings are on the wholespire.org webpage. We'll make sure that everyone, as a follow-up, gets a link to that as well. And then just because this does relate to the information shared today, there is a fact sheet on why and how to prioritize physical activity in schools on the Healthy Palmetto webpage. So that link is there, and we'll also include that fact sheet and the link to it on the follow-up email as well, in case you want more information about the data or why we should do something about it and how we should do something about it. So just one more time, I want to thank the awesome presenters that we had today. And then also just want to thank everyone who took time out of their busy schedules to spend a little bit of that with us. And we look forward to seeing y'all next school year for our next series. Thanks, everyone.